All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Cloud Security 101, Balancing Access and Protection. I'm Jason Vanzin with Right Hand Technology Group, and I'll be moderating today's panel. We're a couple guys short, so I'll probably be joining the panel as well. We're here to unpack the tricky balance between security and accessibility in the cloud. Cloud brings speed, scalability, but it also brings risk. So how do we protect what matters without locking everything down? That's what we're here to explore. Today, we're joined by two strong voices from the MSP space, people who are in the field every day helping businesses secure their environments. So let's kick off with a couple introductions. Just kind of, I guess, your name, your company, your role, and maybe one sentence about cloud security. You want to start off, Dan?
Yeah, sure. I'm Dan Umek, Director of Operations at Alpha and Omega Computer Consultants in the greater Nashville, Tennessee area. You got me on the sentence, though. I didn't have anything prepared for that. Yeah, I mean, it's important. It's a lot more important than people realize. I'll say that. So, tell me over to you.
Lots of words for Dan, and this it's a new one.
Oh, that's a first for sure.
Yeah.
Tony Messerschmidt, I'm Chief Operating Officer and co-owner of Embark here in the Des Moines, Iowa area. And so we've seen a cloud-first approach often, and we help lots of clients identify if the cloud works out for them well, and do our best to make them aware of the security risks.
Great. All right. Like I said, I'm Jason Vanzin with Right Hand Technology Group. We are an MSP in Pittsburgh. We work a lot with clients for cybersecurity and compliance. And yeah, we're excited to have this webinar. So I guess kind of to start things off, before we talk about the bad stuff or the scary stuff, let's maybe quickly talk about the benefits, like why people are using the cloud. Obviously, you got speed, you got scalability, flexibility, cost savings. There's obviously empower remote workforces, fast deployments. You can access your data from anywhere. But kind of opening up to you guys. What are some of the biggest benefits, or maybe some examples that clouds really helped out your clients?
Sure. Yeah, I can jump on this one. It's kind of interesting for us because we actually offer a private cloud service. So when you're using like AWS or Microsoft Azure or services like Microsoft 365 or Dropbox, those are kind of considered public cloud solutions. So those are, big companies that are hosting those in their data centers. We also have a privately held data center. So it's just something that we work with our clients on pretty regularly as well on multiple levels. The benefits that we see and we offer, in that regard, is a lot of times it's going to be a lot cheaper and more efficient to have us manage it. Or, even if you're going with a solution like Dropbox, right, for a storage perspective, all the things that go into supporting that server just to store those files, it's going to be cheaper a lot of times to go with, a major solution like that. And same thing with Microsoft 365. It's just because there's so many people using that service, it's going to be more cost effective than doing all that stuff. And that's kind of why the market has gone in that direction. Whereas we used to have everything Microsoft Office, locally. Now it's, at some of these data centers as well.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed on a whole bunch of stuff too, which I agree with too. That we always used to call it, doesn't matter where the blinking lights sit, but that's kind of one of the components to the cloud allows you to shift that workload from on-prem to off-prem. So somebody else is worrying now about the blinking lights, power, fire, physical access, some of those other things too that come along with some of the things Jason and Dan mentioned. So lots of good wins. We had a quick win too, not too long ago, where we had client with a bunch of VPN access issues and tough internet and stuff like that too, where the cloud moved in and really provided them exceptional service in the ways of virtual desktop and remote work. So I might have jumped ahead and gone into the win stories, but I know that was something that we were really excited about.
Yeah, no, there's no protocol here. We're just winging it. So, yeah, I mean, for us, just getting rid of the ongoing upgrade projects, the hardware refreshes, all that stuff has obviously been huge. I think, going back to the first time you started moving Exchange workloads to the cloud, you used to have to upgrade Exchange. Well, you had to patch it all the time, so you'd have your email down. If you're hosting it in-house, again, if your email server's down, your email's down, you're like, not not doing too good. So just being able to forklift that up to the cloud, was kind of one of the first, I think, widely adopted cloud solutions. But then there's, obviously with Azure and AWS, there's tons of different services. One of the ones we used a few years back, and actually I think we have a client right now that could probably use it, is hopefully it's still there. Azure Files. I don't know if you guys ever used Azure Files, but you get some of these manufacturing clients with CAD drawings and stuff, and their file servers get huge, which technically can be supported with Windows and the storage solution and everything. But if you're trying to back it up, we do image-based backups, and if you have a giant, 10, 20 terabyte server and you're trying to back it up with an image-based backup, it often fails. Or if you're like trying to complete a backup before you do some type of change, it can take too long and fail, and then you got this new risk. So being able to use something like Azure Files, where it's like all your files are sitting in the cloud and then they're caching only the accessed ones locally, lets you take a 20 terabyte server down to a couple hundred gig, and now you're able to back it up and the cloud's being backed up. So that was I would say for us, one of the biggest wins for cloud solutions that solve a real problem, while at the same time letting them keep their workflow with the local server and access some files locally, because pulling down CAD files, 3D drawings and stuff from the cloud wasn't that great.
That's a good use case.
All right, let me, I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling down a list here. So yeah, I guess we'll move on to the why security matters in the cloud. So, one of the things I think, I don't know, hopefully I'm not jumping ahead, but one of the misconceptions is that like you move to the cloud and now you don't have to worry about security. Cloud providers, they secure the infrastructure, they secure the data center, but obviously there's a lot more to it than that. You're not off the hook for security, so that's still on you. What do you guys, you see that same misconception out there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think, the important thing to understand is like any account that you have on any device or any machine in the known universe is an attack surface. And so the same methods that, are used to get into your computer locally, inside your network can be used, to get into a cloud environment. It's just a couple extra steps maybe to get into that account first, and then, to get into the cloud without the proper configurations. That's the other, I guess, misconception. Everyone thinks that by default, all your cloud services, your SaaS tools are going to be secure by default, and they most certainly are not. I've gone to whole, conferences on how just Microsoft 365 is not secure at all, just by the way it comes out of the box. There's so many steps that we have to go through as the sort of professionals in that area to even get it to where, baseline it's usable. And I think, people just don't even know that. They think, oh, Microsoft's a great company. Of course, they're going to have, secure stuff there. There's billions of dollars in that. It's like, well, you think that, but that's not the case. So I think that's a huge misconception there.
Yeah, great points. And I'll just tack on to those as well. So the security and backups, I think, kind of are the common ones that we find. Yeah, it's in 365. It's in Google Workspace. It's wherever it should be good to go. But at the end of the day, it's not, just because they've limited some attack vectors with better security, externally facing security measures. People often forget the internal components that they still got to take care of, which is user administration, monitoring of accounts when people leave or don't change their passwords and some of that stuff too. And like Daniel said, there's this, I'm there, it's safe. I can't tell you how many times we've done assessments where we show them, hey, you're way out of best practice. Let us help you get back into some best practices.
Yeah. I think so many people still think everything's secure. People think it's backed up. They think Microsoft's backed up. which I think if you read Microsoft's documentation, they tell you to get a third-party backup solution. I'm not sure if you guys remember Kevin Mitnick, but he did a demonstration of encrypting email. You know, you think of like ransomware on file servers and stuff, but I was at an event and he had his computers up there. He's, like a DJ with his laptops, but he was mixing up ransomware. He was able to basically encrypt, like, say, a CEO's like full email, and at that point, your Microsoft is like backing up your entire data set, like your entire data set. They're not backing up like individual emails. Like if you need something restored, that's why you need a third party, so you can go in and restore individual emails. The other problem we've seen in the past is archiving. Like, so people, we have archiving. Well, I know, but archiving is before it ever hits your mailbox, where you read it, you filter it, you put it into folders. So like if you go to your CEO and you say, well, I just dumped your last 10 years of emails back into your inbox, you're welcome. It's not going to go over too well. So there's a lot of like misses that people, if they're not really thinking through it, or maybe even walking through what would happen if, kind of an incident response drill of like, what would happen if this happened? How would I be able to recover it? You're not going to pick up a lot of those things. So, and then, I mean, there's still a lot of systems. We're always talking about Microsoft and Google and maybe even Salesforce or something, but companies use so many applications, and I don't think they go through and identify like, what's the security on this one? What's the security on this one? Half of them don't even have MFA yet. So it's a big problem.
Definitely.
All right. Let's talk about. Sorry, I'm got like 3 monitors here. I'm losing track of which monitor I'm on, but let's talk about threats and vulnerabilities. So top of the list, we got on the right slide. Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Top of the list, we got business email compromises, credential theft, misconfigurations. Obviously, these hit SMBs the hardest because they're often, obviously, nobody's looking at this stuff. They're often overexposed and under-resourced. We've seen cases where a single compromise, a compromised login leads to invoice fraud or some embarrassing situations. Cloud access is fast. It's also very exploitable. What do you guys? What threats surprise you guys as you're working with your client environments?
We've seen, I mean, obviously in that list, that's a really good list of things that we've seen. But I think that, to kind of go into a little bit more too, is just at that password level and the ability for people to fish out usernames and passwords to things. And then given all the different cloud platforms that are out there today, the ability to cloud hop as well has been a huge problem for people. And, for companies like us to help our clients that have been exposed in that fashion, it's very, very difficult. It takes a lot of time to track what happened, where it happened, and bring things back to the center. So, but yes, I agree with that list.
I think what's kind of surprised me the most is just, as you kind of learn the behavior of hackers after working with or against them over time, however you want to put that, is that really, that initial breach is not always, the worst thing. I mean, a lot of times that happens, it goes completely undetected. It's the fact that, they're trying to establish persistence, and the methods that they've developed to establish persistence that kind of make any of those one things on the front end a lot more effective. So, like something that you'll see a lot of is session jacking, where they will get the token for a valid, logged in session. And then what they can do from that is then generate a refresh token so that, those sessions have, under security measures, a certain sort of half-life. They will cancel out and no longer be valid. That token will be bad. But with the refresh token, they can generate another valid session. And that's how they kind of establish persistence in the network. And so what you'll find is that a lot of times these guys will get in somewhere and then they'll just kind of hang out and try things and test things. And you might, I've had clients that didn't have MFA and then we got that turned on, but they're still seeing activity because there's someone in the network, because they've been able to establish persistence. And so I think that's the biggest thing is it's not just the threat of how they initially get breached, just like once they're in there, what are they still doing? And a big, I guess front end issue that isn't mentioned here that I've, dealt with a lot as well is, what's it called? Sorry, I have it in my notes. Conditional access. That's what it's called. Conditional access policy. So, it's not like a hacker from China can't make it look like he's in your hometown. And if you don't have several measures of conditional access in place that are appropriate for an environment, a hacker can very easily simulate to make it look like they're a legitimate actor when in fact they're not. And so, having no conditional access is the worst thing. But even when you build that conditional access policy, it really takes time and thought to do it the right way. And so I think that's another thing that I would definitely mention is, that stuff. So.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even with MFA, one of the big attacks now is MFA fatigue, where, they just keep pounding away at the MFA until one of your users just clicks yes, and then kind of lets them in. I would say one of the bigger vulnerabilities I think out there as well that maybe people don't talk about as much is just APIs and enterprise applications and things like that on Azure that you set up and forget about. They're not maintained, not tracked. Obviously, if those things aren't maintained and tracked, it's like direct access into your systems versus having to even log in. Or if you don't know how to configure them properly, you're just trying to follow, put somebody in charge that's not super technical and they have global admin because, you're a small company and they just go in and configure these things and, don't lock them down to a user or a location, like saying with the conditional access. Yeah, I mean, those things accumulate, especially when you get the pop-ups. You're trying to turn on some integration, you get the pop-up and it's like, do you authorize this integration? And you just click, yeah, well, that just created the API integration in the background. And I mean, we'll talk a little bit some best practices around that type of stuff, but that's kind of the other one I think with all these cloud is all the integrations that aren't really managed is a big vulnerability.
Yeah, those repositories are getting compromised all the time too. So like the code base in there, it might be secure at one point, but then could get compromised at a different point. And if you have that integration in place, you're plugged in and you're vulnerable right away.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on vulnerabilities?
That's all I got.
Nailed it.
All right, so best practices. Let me get back to my document here. So some of the best ROI comes from obviously the basics, right? Account audits, MFA, conditional access, geo-blocking, but securities and layers, nothing's a 100% right fit. Not everyone needs 20 tools for these to manage these things, but every client needs to control who gets in and what they can do. So what are some of the best practices you guys use at your clients to obviously limit their exposure on their cloud solutions?
Yeah, so kind of as I had mentioned before, the first thing that we look at is default configurations. As soon as we get on, we look at everything they have, how it's set up. That's square one for us. And then going forward, we're very proactive. We do have a live, incident response process and tool so that as things are happening, we're responding to it. But we also have automation in place so that, as soon as something suspicious is happening, certain fail safes are in place and those things are implemented even before we get a person with the hands on the keyboard working on it, analyzing the situation. So that's kind of our approach.
Yeah, agree with Daniel. Again, man, I just keep following suit, but great steps there. And also too, what we really try and lead with as well is just an assessment of the entire infrastructure, getting our best view into it, what is in best practice, out of best practice. Obviously, I think the easy hitters are always user logins, password policies, access management for sure, who has access to what, debt accounts. I can't even tell you how many times we roll in and see tens, 20s, hundreds of accounts that aren't disabled, still active, compromised on the dark web somewhere. It just absolutely scary stuff, in that aspect. But And I think then, finishing that up too is end user training as well. As I know Jason and Daniel can attest to, we do everything possible, to keep the client and to keep data secure. But users at the end of the day, they're the ones that open up the door wide open. And if we're not encouraging them to understand better security practices, then most of what we do can be compromised quickly. So
Yeah, I agree on the user accounts. I think that's why. I mean, we see the same thing when you have Active Directory. If you're not set up with Azure AD, but you're using or Entra ID, but you're using servers still. People just aren't very good at maintaining those accounts. And then the scarier thing I think with the cloud piece I see a lot is global admin as a regular user. Somebody, whoever first set it up, or the IT person even, like their regular account being a global admin. So just like Active Directory, you shouldn't be working, you shouldn't be at your computer doing your day-to-day work from an admin account. You should have a standard account and then switch over to the admin when you need to. Same thing with the cloud. Your admin accounts shouldn't be work accounts. That's always like one of the first things we set up as like a secondary or separate admin account that nobody's working from, right? So like no licenses assigned to it or any of that type of stuff. Could be a bit of a pain when you try to set things up, but I guess that's security in general.
And we do that too, like a just-in-time sort of account where it can be available and then deactivated once it's done being used for that purpose. And yeah, I mean, we do that across the board as well.
Without anybody can grab their credit card today, right, and go spin up a new 365 environment, a new Google Workspace environment. So that's fantastic because it's accessible for everybody. But usually everybody that we talk to, and they don't have a full-time IT person who's been tasked with some specific things. So adding users is super simple. Removing the users is super forgetful. Stuff happens, and lots of people wear lots of hats, whether it's in businesses or schools. I can remember a time too, we did an audit on the school, and they had it was actually a school district, had over 600 active staff accounts that had been moved on in some capacity, but still active. A good chunk of them had been breached. We could find their usernames and passwords out in the dark web, and they had access, a good chunk of them had access to PII data about students and other the teaching systems. Again, being able to cloud hop to a teaching system, it was just crazy. But in a lot of those cases, the IT person is also maybe the gym teacher, who's also maybe wearing another hat in some life too. So it's very tough to keep up with that.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of the same stuff in small businesses. I have so many windows up here. I guess I wasn't even looking at the slide, but I see data encryption is one of them. One of the things we do for ourselves and for clients, not every client, it's not a standard for across the board, but we use a solution called Phoenix Pyre, and it's basically file level encryption, and you can lock down. So like on our security data, like the whole SharePoint drive is encrypted, and you have to be using authorized application. You have to be coming from an authorized IP address. You have to be a user. Obviously, you have the right encryption keys.
Love it.
Before it'll even open, and and it has to come from an authorized location. So it has to be that file folder. If I copy the file from that folder to my desktop and try to open it, it doesn't work, even though everything else is applicable. A really cool solution, and it's FIPS validated. So like CMMC world, it's like a really good solution because it limits the scope. Yeah, it can be frustrating when it's not working, but for some reason the encryption key isn't on your computer or something. But it's the cool thing about it, and I guess this is data encryption, whether it's the cloud or not, is if you got breached and they exfiltrated the data, it's unreadable, right? Because they have to be coming from your IP address. They have to have your encryption key. They have to have the files in the exact folder structure where it's supposed to be. So pretty powerful solution. I said it's called Phoenix Fire. Unfortunately, it's not a right-hand product.
Is it a infomercial?
Yeah, well, we're a partner, so I guess, you know.
Getting paid for plugging that.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get a sponsorship there now.
Yeah. Anything else on these? I guess the other thing we do, I don't know if you guys do this, is especially as an MSP, we lock down all of our tools to our IP address, and we use, I guess I announce names of products, but we use Total for our kind of VPN, and then we're able to just lock down every tool to those IP addresses. So again, you got to be on our VPN, coming from our IP address, all, you know, a million different layers. So taking that conditional access kind of to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's how everything should be. I mean, especially when you work with a company like ours, like we have the tools, resources, the manpower to make stuff like that work. That could get really tedious if you don't have a full-time IT person, but if you do, and there's not a really good reason not to do it that way, I think everyone should be just as locked down as they can be. You got to be practical, but like you also have to be realistic about the reality of the danger. And you know, everyone who has a cyber insurance policy, if you want it to pay out, you know, you got to think as like every time you make a business decision, think about, you know, hey, how will this, you know, impact my cyber insurance policy paying out? And a lot of times it's just going to point to you should probably be more secure. And I think you know, I think things are going to continue to go that way, and competitive companies are going to, you know, continue to start to be more secure in that way.
Yeah, and I mean, all that stuff, I mean, it's not like a one. So like the VPN, again, there's other products, Perimeter 81 and Nord VPN or Nord Layer. You know, there are other solutions, I guess, but the nice thing about them is they also apply on your outside the cloud, right? So you're at the airport, you're at the coffee shop or whatever, they got zero trust on them. So as soon as you boot up and you're connected, you're in your secure bubble, which is really nice.
Sure, love it.
How about security audits? Are you guys doing any like using any technologies to like analyze, say, Microsoft or Google for you know, like security standards, or your own standard maybe you're following?
Yeah, we have a couple different ways we do that. I mean, we do like full penetration testing that involves, you know, trying to get into the cloud and the resources that are just available to the network at any level. We also have some other scanning tools just in general that kind of, again, are going to look at those configurations, how they're set up, you know, what the sort of attack surface is and what the risk profile is. And that's kind of our baseline for how we operate. We always just kind of put everything down on digital paper, so to speak, and then start, you know, working one by one to get everything squared away.
Yeah, we do similarly. We do penetration testing, internal, external, and also API testing as well, like you're saying, Jason and Daniel. The API side of the house is still legit, needs its own love too. So we do that, and then, you know, with our scanning that we do in addition to that, everything is good up until the last scan. So we got to keep consistent. Things can and do change over time. Good change management policies also help with making sure we keep things under control. But yeah, getting the environment to one spot is just a snap in time. We got to make sure that we're taking continual snaps as we go through the relationship, making sure nothing changed out of scope or is not documented.
Yeah, and I guess the thing I don't see on here is monitoring. Obviously, you know, people monitor their networks and monitor their endpoints, but you also need to monitor the cloud. You know, to the extent you can. Obviously, Microsoft and Google make it a lot easier than maybe some smaller cloud solutions, but I'm sure you guys heard the phrase, the identity is the new frontliners. I forget the exact wording, but yeah, basically the identity is now like the main attack thing, and that's obviously because everyone's moving to the cloud. Um, any thoughts on monitoring the cloud?
Yeah, that was kind of the point that I led with on this, because that stuck out to me too, is just that, yeah, I mean, having the monitoring set up in a way that you can automate response as much as possible, but then just, having a sort of an incident response plan in general, like if there's any level of threat or potential threat, having a way to triage that, having a way to, in the shortest amount of time, kind of determine what's going on there, it's really, really essential. And you could put all the stuff on the front end in place, like Tony was saying, and that could stop things. But one wrong move, and you're in a real situation, and you need to know what to do when that happens. And so monitoring is the first piece of that. Automation is hopefully the second piece of that, to like shut it down before it becomes a problem. Then the third piece is just having a process, so when that situation arises, everyone knows what they're doing, all hands on deck, and you take care of it how you have to take care of it.
Yeah, that layered approach that Daniel was talking about too, something in place that can react to something too that's 24/7 and available before things can and do spread too, right? So I'll go back to cloud hopping a little bit. Once they get access to one, they're not going to just spring right at this particular moment and give you the shocking on them. They're going to wait and figure out exactly what you have access to that's outside of that space as well. So I don't know many places that have just one cloud environment. Most places at least have 2 or 3 or more. Think of Salesforce, think of Dropbox again, think of 365, Google Workspace. I mean, there's a ton of them. So having the proper tools to take all of those different cloud infrastructures, put them into one picture, so that way your different cloud instances are all monitored similarly, and in a single pane of glass is very, very critical. It's hard to get your arms around how much sprawl that the cloud can potentially bring. Even sometimes too, I used to work for a couple of different enterprises, and they struggled with departments that had credit cards that could spin up a Google over here when they didn't like when we use Microsoft, or could use Dropbox when they didn't like using something else or whatever. So these things can and do spin up on their own, and you just got to keep it all under wraps for sure.
Yeah, I think that comes back to the first section in the NIST CSF of identify, your cloud applications are just like the software you have local. You got to keep track of what you have installed, what assets you have. It's just another asset. We have a solution that we use for that monitors them, and you kind of go in and see what they're using, and flag them as business use, not business use, authorized, not authorized. And I could tell you that it's shocking when you go in and see the list of everything in use. Now, some of them just get, they might not, like, for example, I know in ours, Adobe pops up, Adobe Cloud, but it's like, if you have Adobe products, Adobe Cloud just gets flagged as in use. So that's like one of the big things. Again, even with like compliance, like you have to map out your data flow, and you have to know what data you have where. So you have to know what cloud applications people are using in order to control it.
Yeah, I think you both kind of hit on that point, as just the custodial aspect, the sheer amount of time it is to track every piece of everything that's touching some endpoint out there in the universe. That in and of itself is a massive undertaking. I would argue that even most small internal IT teams they don't have the resources to do that, and it's a project. It takes time, but exactly like Jason was saying, for compliance reasons, it has to be done. And so I think that that is one of the efficiencies you gain with going with an MSP and an IT outsourced IT solution is we're so practiced at that, and our business model is optimized to execute on things like that really efficiently. And I mean, it saves you hours and hours and probably tens of thousands of dollars a year just making sure that stuff is done right.
Yeah, and like I said, MSPs. I mean, we're like in this world, we're constantly at conferences, constantly hearing about the next, the next threat, the next solution to that threat. And so we're always, I'd say we're probably more on the front lines than, most typically when you're an internal IT, you're putting out fires. You're struggling just to keep a place from burning down. So, cool. Any good incident response or disaster recovery stories?
I kind of went ahead on my last one. That one with the school district, that was just crazy, man. It was amazing to hear how fast somebody said, well, I don't want my name showing up in the paper tomorrow, so let's get to work on this. It's nobody's fault, right? It's just sometimes it's just one of those things where, like you were saying, Jason, if you're internal IT and you might be swamped, right? You don't have the time to keep up with the who's coming and who's going, and then, but even if you're not internal IT, you're the gym teacher, it's super hard. I mean, it's even more hard to remember that you actually have to do that. So.
Yeah. I remember last time we got together, I kind of mentioned a scenario where there was like an attempted ransomware attack, but we were just a step ahead every step of the way. We had everything in place. We were able to bring everything back up. We were able to, basically kick everything out within hours. Like I think we had completely done our, digital forensics and everything, and just the amount of time and money we saved that particular client is just insane. And they knew it. They knew it right away. And like, had we not had you guys, sell this security solution that you were begging us to do, oh man, we would have been in hot water. And it's scary when it happens. It's not fun, but this is exactly what you do. You set everything up the right way. You monitor things, and then again, sometimes things is just going to happen, and you just got to accept that there's inevitability there. But if you're cool-headed about it and you have process in place, really, that's how you're going to stop all that collateral damage. And we were lucky in the one time that it did happen with us that we were very, very well prepared. So,
yeah, I think having those playbooks especially for just business email compromise, like having a playbook of like what are the steps that, especially because typically it's coming into the help desk, right? So like you need the playbook that they can quickly just jump into action and disable account, boot out login sessions, all those type of things. I know I think I mentioned it last time we got together, like when I was talking about security awareness training, and like even if the person isn't 100%, because they're probably never, there's going to be somebody false for something, but even I'm just realizing like the users now I'll see they might fall for something, but they quickly realize they fell for something, and they're calling in and saying, hey, I just gave away my password, and then we're able to jump in and again execute the playbook, make sure it doesn't become worse than it could be. So I see that more often than actual like major breaches at this point. Again, maybe that's because that's what we're there to do, to train people and get them doing the right things. But
yeah, and if you're on the client side, I would say this, right? If like you really are working with your IT company, you want to get the most bang for your buck, you want to be proactive and really be a good partner to us, is make time at least once a year for some type of tabletop exercises, especially with key personnel, people who are going to be your boots on the ground on the client side, just to know hey, what's the expectations on our side. Obviously you do the standard security awareness training, make sure everyone knows of what to look out for, but knowing what to do when a scenario comes up, it keeps you from panicking, it keeps us from panicking, and we work together under expectations that we've already set. It just it's a really, really good way to just kind of have peace of mind, and really, again, in the interest of your cyber insurance policy and all that, a lot of it is going to kind of predicate upon having these incident response plans or tabletop exercises on a regular basis, depending on what you're getting. So I would say do it. It's a really worthwhile thing to do. We get a lot of it as well too in serving you better in a lot of different ways. So
cool. Yeah, I've been dragging this slide off for a while, and I know there's not that many slides for this one, but I guess one last thought I was having as Tony was talking is like, if somebody gets access to your email or an employee's email, that's the quickest way, like you're saying, to jump around the cloud, right? Because then they can quickly figure out what other applications you use. I mean, probably just search their inbox for password reset emails for other applications, and now they can jump to those applications, do a password reset. They're already in your email box. So you really got to have, like, you got to be on top of it with the security monitoring, the things that look suspicious. You're getting alerted because, you know, again, in the past, when you didn't have all that, you didn't have, you know, the monitoring, or like Microsoft at least now has a lot of stuff around email forwarding and stuff. When those things get turned on, that they're generating alerts where in the past they weren't. At a minimum, you should be having those turned on. Like if somebody sets up a forwarding rule, somebody should be getting notified right away, because that's kind of the hallmark of you're in trouble.
100%.
Cool.
Yeah. Trying to articulate this as best as I possibly can, and also kind of sound like a broken record at the same time. But, you know, without an MSP, if I'm just talking to somebody who just wants to know what should they do first, you know, to secure their cloud infrastructure. I mean, like you guys have been talking about too, there's so many, I don't even want to call them layers. They're kind of like steps as they go, you know, you go from left to right. I'm trying to visualize in my head, but they get more complex the farther right that, you know, you go. The first and the most easiest thing is just, man, the social and the phishing aspect of cloud security and just security in general. It's so easy on that spot. I mean, they don't have to be technical. They don't have to be, you know, I watch the news, I'm sure just as much as anybody else, and they've got, you know, camera crews that were led into this like little pack of kids that are sitting in some country somewhere, and they're just bombing emails left and right, looking like they're legitimate, or, you know, phishing for passwords. And it's just so easy, so simple. So that's the first thing. If anybody can get control of that, is just look at the users, look at the passwords, look at the training for sure.
Yeah. All right, you guys ready to move to the next slide finally, or?
Let's go.
I suppose.
All right, so shared responsibility. Your cloud provider, again, we've been talking about this whole time, they secure their systems, you secure your access. So think of it like a hotel. They have cameras, they have locks, but you still have to lock your door. You still have to use your keys. And if you don't manage your part right, you know, legally, they're just going to say, well, we had all the stuff there available to you. You didn't use it. We did our part. So there is this shared responsibility matrix. They give you the tools. It's the same thing with servers. I'm going off track, but yeah, like way back in the early 2000s, I wrote this article for Pittsburgh Business Times about like security, and like you got all this stuff on the server that nobody uses to secure their server. Like all this stuff's there, you just need to use it. So ultimately, the cloud provider is basically just going to say, you know, that's on you, right? That you didn't use these things. So how do you guys, I guess, work with your clients and explain like the shared responsibility between the client, and hopefully they're outsourcing it to you, or and the cloud provider?
Yeah, well, in our case, kind of as I had mentioned earlier, like we are the cloud provider to many of our clients in a meaningful sense. And so, you know, the shared responsibility model is just directly between us and them. And so we kind of, you know, take full accountability for making sure that they have everything in place, and we, you know, have even the security awareness training solutions available to them. And really, you know, for us, it's, you know, monthly follow-ups on reporting and saying who's actually done their training, who hasn't done their training. We run phishing campaign simulations, and, you know, can test the client and see, hey, are people still, you know, falling short here? Are they still click on links they shouldn't? And when they do, you know, it does have to be a conversation, but, you know, it's got to be a two-way conversation of, hey, you've got people that are still, you know, not kind of buying into the model. What are we doing about that internally? What are you guys doing? How can we better serve you in that way? Is there anything that we could be doing to kind of relay that message, whether it's when support tickets come in as a friendly reminder or something? And so for us in that, it's very, very much a hands-on collaborative process and an ongoing discussion of, you know, do you understand, you know, everything that we're doing for you? Do you understand, you know, how you can make the most of it and what's required of you to actually leverage that to be secure? And if you don't, you know, where are the gaps and where can we fill that in? And we find that normally usually within working with us for about a year, most people get on top of most things, and then it's just, kind of that security awareness training, making sure people are keeping up with things like that, we kind of have to harp on every once in a while as well.
Yeah, I try to think of, your metaphor is pretty good too. I know we try to get them to see their aha moment, or create an aha moment of security, because I think everybody thinks it's going to happen to somebody else and not them. And, we always use this, not if, it's when, to try and drive that. Also, we've talked about, it's kind of like, an insurance policy. If you insure your car, but you leave your keys in the ignition and somebody steals it, insurance company's not going to cover it. So the security is in that same fashion too. So, ongoing, if they are one of our clients, yes, we have multiple layers that we put in place with them. I think, like Daniel said, it's just a communication, path to keep on with them. Is, here's what we're seeing. What do you guys think? What do you want to do about it? What should we be doing about it? Constant state of communication and updates. But yeah, it's just getting them to get everybody to an aha moment. This is going to happen at some particular point. Going back to what we were talking about the previous month, is what are you going to do then when it happens? So
Yeah, I think for me, it usually comes on sales calls. I think our clients, I'm not as worried about, because they brought us in to manage this stuff. But I know often on sales calls, especially with probably a lot of companies now are 100% cloud-based, so they don't have any servers or anything, and they just very often think that, well, we don't really need you guys to manage our security because we're cloud-based. It's just like, oh boy, So I think, again, I think you said, Tony, earlier, like, it's where doesn't matter where the lights are flashing. I can't remember exactly what you said, but it was pretty good.
you can steal that one.
Yeah. You're gonna have to tell me what it was again, but it's somebody's server, right? You used to be, it was your server, now it's their server, and you still have to have the security set up and configured, and they have pieces of it, just like you'd have your server room locked. All their stuff is security. So, again, I guess I'm just thinking out loud again, because of sales calls. I'm thinking about some potential comebacks as I'm on these calls. Because it's, a lot of times when you're on a sales call, you don't want to get in kind of a mismatch where they're like, well, we're in the cloud, we're secure. And you're like, no, you're not. And they're like, yes, we are. And you're like, no, you're not.
I think the best quip that I've found is like, are you willing to test that theory? Like, how much do you want to bet? You want to bet me a contract that I can't get into what you have? Because I'm willing to make that bet. If you are, I think that at least gets them to take pause. A lot of times we will do like initial intelligence on, what they might have out on the dark web, what we can find, and just show them up front, like, look, this is already what people have access to that we know about. That's probably enough to kind of want to look a little bit deeper. And I think that's kind of an effective way to at least generate the appropriate amount of concern, to start that conversation.
And I think if you're listening to this now and you're kind of out there wondering and you haven't quite found that aha moment yet, to go have somebody do a dark web scan on your domain names. You'd be absolutely amazed. I mean, human beings are just human beings. People will reuse passwords. If allowed to, they will not regularly change them. That stuff just gets out there like a wildfire and just goes. So that sometimes helps, and then followed up with an assessment of some sort to really show on a scale, give them a really good scale of 0 to 100. You're at a 25 or a 50 maybe at best. I've not rarely seen above 50s from an assessment out of the gate. So out of 100. So it's, yes, it is not. I bought this from Microsoft. It's super secure. Let's go move on to the next thing. Sorry, Microsoft.
Yeah, one of the things I always have, we always do initially as well, and I usually have my sales guy always do it too. He's not a security guy. He's a sales guy, and I'm always like, just go to MX Toolbox, put your domain in. You got DKIM, DMARC, SPF. Like, you have all these things set up. Because I don't know how many clients tell us they're secure, or prospects tell us they're secure, and then they don't even have DMARC set up. It's like, okay, so you wonder why you're getting so many spam messages and so many impersonation messages. Your email security isn't set up properly. I mean, sometimes they have, I hate to say it, sometimes they have MSPs managing their stuff and they still don't have DMARC set up. So that's a good test. I guess if you have an MSP as well, go check DMARC to see if it's set up.
Yeah, at least now that stuff is becoming more like required and standard. Like it wasn't even that long ago where people get away without having it. Now it's pretty much insisted upon, by a lot of different, SaaS vendors and stuff out there to use their tools.
Yeah. There's still a lot. I mean, it seems like almost every prospect we come across doesn't have DMARC set up. Maybe we're just lucky. But anyways, anything else on the shared responsibility matrix? Or I guess not matrix, but.
I mean, yeah, I think, this kind of goes into the question of like security versus convenience, like things like MFA, right? Like nobody likes doing MFA. I don't like doing MFA. You know how many times I do MFA per day for my job? How many factors I have to verify? Like more than you. So if you think this is too much of a pain, I guarantee that I have a way worse off than you just to make sure that you're secure. And all I'm asking you to do is, do that one MFA request, go on your phone, fill out the code, and you'll have to do that maybe once or twice a day for the average person for their job, unless you're doing something that's highly sophisticated, which there are industries out there that are a lot more regulated, and that's a good thing. Really, it's a good thing. But we are, the perfect example of an industry where like that's pervasive in everything we do. We can't even touch our tools without these layers of security. And if somebody does have theirs set up that way, I would be very questionable about what they have going on there. But yeah, it's when we talk about like shared responsibility, doing these things and knowing that they're necessary at this stage of the game as things have kind of progressed, and you really need to give yourself the best chance of at least dissuading attackers. It's to me not negotiable. Everyone needs to do stuff like that, and no one's beneath it, whether it's the C-suite or whoever. Everyone needs to do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wasn't even thinking of shared responsibility down to the individual user. They got to do their part.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, you just said something that made me think of something. I think I already forgot it. All right, we'll move slides. Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. So, security isn't just about prevention, it's preparation. We've all had clients avoid major damage because their users were trained, they had an IR plan, and they practiced it. So again, like we talked about, security is your lock, cyber resilience is your insurance, your fire drill, your backup plan. As we were talking, I think that's the last one we did with cyber resilience. So just thinking about planning ahead, maybe for people that are listening in, what are some recommendations you think people should go away with, or again, kind of planning ahead?
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what we covered, definitely schedule at least an annual penetration test to, make sure whatever you're doing with whoever you're doing it with is valid. I would even recommend like ongoing vulnerability scans as well. You could kind of catch things upstream and remediate things. This is just kind of regular standard maintenance now. And then of course, doing the incident response plan and the tabletop exercise, like knowing what to do when things happen. The sooner you get that done, and it takes some time to do, but the sooner you get it done, the more secure you are, the more money that you're theoretically saving, more time you're saving. So I think, doing all those things is a great starting point, but partnering with an MSP who has all the solutions and can guide you through that process, I think is even better.
I'm going to steal some of my final thoughts too on this one too. But if you're listening, you don't know what to do, and you don't have an MSP, go talk to an MSP, get an assessment done. I can't say assessment enough. Like Jason has said, like Daniel said, we've thrown a lot of, I think, concepts, topics, acronyms, all kinds of things around it. It is a lot of information and it is a lot to do, but get a good MSP to come in and do an assessment and then sit down with them after that assessment's done and have them walk you through the priorities and how you would attack this, because it is a big thing, right? There's a lot of things that you can do, and there's a lot of things that can get missed. You just can't get stuck in the mud, right? You can't be like, it's too big for me, I'm not going to do anything. And I would also say too, this is a shared story too. We've had some people that have MSPs, and we've done assessments knowing that they're not going to switch to MSPs, but kind of just to counterbalance, counter check how things are going. You know, we've done a couple of tests like that too, just to make sure that things are being kept on top of mind and handled. And but yes, just get an assessment scheduled, see what comes back from it.
Yeah, and I would just add, you know, again, I love the NIST CSF just because it's very simple conceptually. Might be a little more difficult when you're actually working through it, but you know, the first part is identify. Like, it doesn't matter, like if we don't identify what we're trying to secure, there's no way we're going to secure it. So working through a list, you know, just get a spreadsheet up. What are our cloud applications? One of the things that I'd also recommend is, you know, maybe create a column for is it Azure AD integrated or Entra ID or whatever you want to call it. It's always going to be Azure AD to me. You know, is it Azure AD integrated or Google? You know, whatever your identity provider is, because obviously the more logins your users have, the more difficult it is to protect it. So if you have I know for us, like everything is, are you Azure AD integrated? If you're not, you know, we might look for another solution. So that really just kind of simplifies things. All right, I guess we're coming to the end here. So if you guys would like to connect with any of us, this is our LinkedIn profiles. You know, I guess obviously we appreciate everybody's time today. We had 2 people drop out. I think you know, we made do.
Yeah.
We really ran that one slide.
Overdue, I think. Us 3 could talk for at least probably another hour, but
yeah. Yeah, and obviously you guys can reach out to any one of us if you preferably if you're working with one of us, you stick with that one. But you know, you can reach out to any one of us for an assessment or for help on any of your cloud solutions. And again, we're going to be doing this every month, different topic every month. So yeah, continue to follow us and join us next time. Appreciate you guys doing this again.
hey,
Thank you, everybody.
thank you so much.
Have a good day, guys.
See you guys.